All right, so what's going on, guys? So in today's video, I'm going to continue the teardown of the engine. Of course, if you saw my last video, we took the engine out of the car without using a lift or a hoist or anything like that. All we used was a dolly and a floor jack. So in this video, we're going to get the engine tore down, get the accessories and everything off of it, and hopefully find out what caused it to fail. All right, guys, so like I said, in this video, we're going to remove all the accessories and everything that's currently on this engine. And to do that, all you need mainly is just a 10 and a 12. One thing I do want to point out just when we get started is that your crank pulley, you see I already removed it. So your crank pulley is separate from your crank bolt. A lot of people, when they just get started, they think they have to take off the crank bolt, to get the pulley off. The pulley just held on with these 4 bolts. And then you can normally like tap this with a mallet and it'll come off. So what will happen though, because these cars are getting up there in age, is they will almost get like rusted together. So it'll make it really hard to get off. And I've had occasions where it was just easier for me to pull that crank bolt off as well and then pull the whole thing off. But this will come off as a separate piece. So from here, if you're not familiar with this motor, you should really start taking pictures of everything so you know how to put this stuff back together. Do not fall for that old trap where you tell yourself you're going to remember and then you don't. One thing I want to talk about as well is this oil sandwich plate. This is one made by Glow Shift. They're all pretty much the same thing. It works fine. It does leak a little, but everyone I've had has leaked around the mating connection, not around the ports, but around these connections here. So with that said, I'm just going to start off and take these bolts off for the water pump. These are 10. And of course, this is a lot easier to do with the motor out of the car. I have had to do this, just adjusting this belt with the motor in the car, and it ends up taking twice as long just because you can only move it 1/8 of a turn at a time. And of course, if you guys remember, this is a new water pump. It's only been on this car again for a couple hundred miles, so this will be getting transferred over to my new block. One up here. But you can see this thing is definitely a little worse for wear, and I don't think I have another one. And I don't know if you guys noticed that, but I already see what the problem is. And it's ironic because I was already talking about this when I was working on the block. But what happened is my balance shaft belt broke. So look at that thing. This is probably the original belt. I can't see any words on it. It's like I can't see any words on it, but I'm willing to bet this is the original belt. And you can see it just shredded itself. All right, so this right here is why we were talking about doing a balance shaft delete. Granted, again, this belt is old, but these are really known for failing. So this would explain, at least partially, why I had that knocking noise. So we'll see how bad this really is now. Well, that's good to know. Now we know what happened with the engine. And I'm glad it didn't take out the timing belt. Yeah, the timing belt still looks in good shape now. I don't think I'm going to use this. I think I'll just save this for a spare down the road. I'm going to go with the Evo belt on this new one. All right, so now I'm just going to remove the alternator. The alternator bolt is a 14. I'll pull that out. So of course, the alternator bolt has that square head on it. The alternator is out. So I got bits of balance shaft belts in here. So we're gonna see if we can get these. Get this. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that so these bolts are different sizes. A bolt crank position sensor. And that's basically all we're doing, guys. It's just removing all this stuff and then transferring it over so that I know where it goes. I think now I'm going to go ahead and pull the water pump. I'm going to go ahead and place it on. I'm just going to place this on the new block because I do have to get another gasket for it. So I think it's about time I go ahead and remove my oil filter and my oil line over here. Sure. All right, so it's the line off. Set this off to the side. So with the exception of the sandwich adapter, that's all I need from down here. So now I'm going to remove the bracket for this mount here and then remove the power steering and the AC compressor. I'm not sure if the camera's going to pick that up, but if you notice, there's actually oil coming out of that middle hole. So, and if we look, it looks like a bit of thread sealant was on that bolt. So we do want to keep that in mind, and we go to put that bolt back, put some thread sealant on it. But all the bolts are the same size. I was going to use this stand for something else, but it has failed the test. So you notice under there, that's one of the wheels. This wheel is completely collapsed. So this is not going to work out for what I thought it was, but at least I know that now before I started trying to weld on it. Like, so it looks like the AC compressor is being blocked by the dolly, because for the power steering pump, which again is this here, you do have the two that are on the side right here. You have one that's here, another one right below it. All right, so that is your power steering pump and the pulley, and it's just 4 bolts. Like I said, it's one here, one there, and then 2 on the side right here. And I think we just have one more bolt for the engine mount. And all these bolts are 14s. I'm not sure if I mentioned that already. And that was actually a nut. And it has a washer behind it. Like I said, you may have noticed I have done this slightly out of order. And the obvious question is, why is the transmission still on here? Just because I started on this side. That was really the only reason. But seeing as how my little dolly has given up its mission, I'm going to go ahead and unbolt the transmission. That will allow me to move the block more easily. And of course, with the transmission, the starter will come out as well. And then I can adjust the block and then take the AC compressor off. We're going to go around the bell housing and start to remove bolts. They should be 14s. The two that's for the starter, there's one here, and there's one right below it, right below your slave cylinder. And ideally you want to catch that. All right, so it looks like the impact's not going to take us too far. I do have to get this one right here by the shifter cable, and all these bolts are the same length. All right, guys, so you really don't need to, but to make this easier to move, I'm going to go ahead and pop these axles out. I could have done this with it on the car. It doesn't really matter. They came out in one piece, and once you unbolt them from the hub, you know, that's nothing really keeping them in anyway. But like I said, I'm going to go ahead and pop them out. I'm just going to use this little pry bar I have here. You just need to get behind the cup, and that is how you remove your axle. Like, so now we just have to do the same thing for the one on the other side. That's the other axle out. So on the bottom here, attached to your inspection plate, you have a few more bolts. These should be 14s as well. You get these knocked out. And of course, you can't really mix these up because these are a lot shorter than the other ones. So there are 3 of those bolts, but that might be it. There were 7 bolts, not counting the 2 for the starter, so 9 bolts total. And it should just be able to rock this free. Yep. And it comes right out. Thus revealing our failing spec clutch with the street disc. You also may have noticed that during this process I have made a bit of a mess. You may have heard when I picked the block up, that was coolant, which in this case is actually just water, because I use, as I mentioned before, I use water when I first do a setup. That way I can find any leaks, and then I replace it with coolant once I've got it all together. But never made it this far with this setup, so that's just the water, and that is what it looks like when it comes out of your engine. That's why if you use just regular tap water, it will start to rust somewhat as it goes through your system. So if you're going to use water, you really want to use distilled water. Obviously, it's preferred to use coolant. So like I said, fortunately, there's nothing wrong with the transmission, so I'm just going to slide this over and out of the way. So with the type of engine stand that I have my block on right now, I can't do anything with the transmission side of it. It's kind of the one big downfall about that type of engine stand, even though they are really common. They're great for assembling the engine, but as far as getting everything done, really need to look into alternatives such as like a vane stand or something like that. I'm going to go ahead and remove this clutch. And these are 412 as well around the pressure plate. Like, so I'm actually going to keep these. You look at the pressure plate, doesn't look too bad. The disc doesn't really look terrible either. It had just barely started to slip under full load. So all that leaves us from here are our flywheel bolts, and then there's gonna be a couple bolts in this this plate here that held the starter, and then I can rotate the block, get that AC compressor off, and then I'll flip this block on its end and then remove the oil pan, and then we'll be done with this. My impact, the flywheel should just wiggle off. And this is a stock flywheel, by the way. I didn't want to go with a lightweight option. And just like I said, it looks like we have a couple tins holding this plate on. And that plate is the same between the autos and the manuals, in case you guys are wondering. All right, so we'll spin this thing around on my two good wheels I have on the front of this thing. The one good thing about this dolly has served me. It's kept the oil pan off the ground. Of course, this is the oil pan that I modified with my dash 10 on it, so I wouldn't want to get damaged because I don't want to have to go through and re-weld that. So when I'm talking about the AC compressor, I'm really talking about the AC compressor and the bracket that goes with it. Now, I think there's a bolt to the bracket that is behind the AC compressor. I'm going to remove the AC compressor itself first and then remove the bracket. So for the AC compressor though, it is 4 bolts, 4 12s. They're really long bolts. All right, so it's pretty much what I thought. There is a bolt behind the AC compressor. All right, so there are 4 bolts for your AC bracket. There's two up top, one down here, and then one in the middle. Your 2 top bolts are actually a lot longer than your other 2, your middle one and your bottom one. And I know I've said this already. I'm not entirely sure what was going on with this block because you can see the coating on it is just complete trash at this point. And now we're just going to remove the oil pan bolts, and these are 10mm bolts. All right, so I think I got everything. This should come off pretty easily because I just changed this. All right, and that looks pretty bad. Now I'm going to show you guys this, but just real quick, it almost looks like I painted the inside of this oil pan silver, like a metallic silver. That's how bad it is. So I'm not sure if this is going to pick up on camera. This is, of course, oil, but it's oil mixed with metal shavings, and it's all over it. So I really hope the camera is picking that up. We got a surprise. So you guys tell me what you think that is. But I'm willing to bet this is the bearing for that balance shaft that failed. So I'm guessing what happened is the balance shaft failed, and as it was kind of just spinning freely in the block, it took this bearing out with it. I have bits of metal inside the pickup tube. It turns over. Oh, there you go. The first rod I touch, it almost sounds like that bearing completely disintegrated. Because that one's fine. Let's turn it over again and check the other ones. Like, see, these are tight. So it looks like the only one I have a problem with, my number 3 rod. That's good news because that means I didn't just waste all my time doing this. I'm sure this crank is scarred up. I may be able to polish it again. I'll have to look at it once I take this thing apart, but I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. All right, guys, so there we have it. So unfortunately, it looks like that engine is toast, but on the bright side, it means that, you know, I didn't waste my time going to the junkyard and pulling that block. So if you're liking the content, you're liking the more detailed videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit that like button because it really helps spread the word. Have a great day.